Thank you for staying with us, everyone. In a major political development, President Bola Tinubu has officially ended the state of emergency in Rivers State and restored Governor Siminalayi Fubara to full executive powers. This move follows months of political turbulence in the state marked by sharp divisions, legislative tussles and fears of a constitutional crisis. Tonight, we unpack the legal and political implications of this decision. What does this mean for governance in Rivers State? And what precedent does it set for federal interventions in state affairs? Are there lessons all sides may have taken away from this? Joining me virtually to provide clarity and constitutional insight is constitutional lawyer and rights advocate Malaki Ogumadu. And right here in the studio is political affairs analyst Ayodele Adewale. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on Politics Tonight. Mr. Ogumadu, thank you for joining us. Good evening to you. Right. But let me start.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me start with you, Mr. Ayodele. The past 6 months have been defined by backroom negotiations and what some people have called delicate compromises. Governor Fubara is set to appoint a new chief of staff, SSG, submit new names of commissioners to the River State House of Assembly. Is this real governance about to start? And is this also a personal victory for Governor Fubara?
Well, I would say that first and foremost, peace has been restored to River State in all spheres, as the case is. We now have political stability where the political actors have decided to work in tandem with the dictates of governance, as the case is. We are no longer going to be seeing some little numbers of legislators passing bills and, as we saw, which is not consistent with the provision of the law. We're not going to see bickering or anybody going to knock down their state houses of assembly or sponsoring one crisis or the other. The economy of the state will be very, very streamlined, and it will lead to speedy growth. And jointly, they will ensure security of life and property of the state and take the state up to an enviable height that is beyond their expectations.
And that's what that matters for you?
For me, the first thing is to guarantee life and property of the people at any cost, right? At any cost. Once that can be enshrined, all the things will go along with that trajectory. All right.
Mr. Ogumadu, let me come to you. Is this a new dawn for Rivers? And from the legal point of view, how does this situation test the limits of Nigeria's federal structure?
That's a tricky one because it is more political than legal. You probably would have garnered that much even from the disputations that went up to the Supreme Court. So here's the point. You know, peace is desirable at all times and in every circumstance. But the issue is at what cost? If you're going to quantify the cost of the peace, in parentheses, that has just been crafted, you would know that we needn't go this far. We didn't travel this far into the woods to be able to crystallize the kind of peace that we are all talking about today. I'm happy that Adewale, my good friend, is on the other side of the, with you over there.
Yeah.
Chief Ganifa, one of our mentors, used to warn about the peace of poverty and the stability of starvation. I don't forget those profound phrases because I was the Deputy National Secretary of JACON, Joint Action Committee of Nigeria, led by Ganifa himself. So I therefore would pose that potent question. Did we need to travel this far as a country, as a federating unit, and wasted these 6 months to be able to get to this position? My answer would be no. In the first place, it is not in dispute. It is beyond prevarication that Mr. President, under Section 305 of the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, has sufficient powers to proclaim a state of emergency. What did not sit well with some of us, which has not been justified even up to this moment, is whether the conditions, the thresholds, and the factors that needed to crystallize before such proclamation existed. Evidently, the answer is no. And we had it nevertheless. So at the end of the day, the chicken has come home to roost. We have now seen how that very sensitive provision of the Constitution that is designed to be used sparingly and at extreme situations where there is palpable breakdown of law and order, and in which violence is or was imminent. But nevertheless, it hurt. Today, parties, the warring parties, have been coupled together, and we're back to where we are at the moment. The issue was, or remains, so let me learn on this. The question is, have we effectively taken care of all of the issues that led to this political intervention? If we have, in the estimation of Nigerians, River State people in particular, then there are chances that we'll surmount and scale through this hurdle. But otherwise, then it remains the peace of the graveyard and the peace of the poverty and the stability of starvation that Chief Ganifu kept warning us about.
And I'm also wondering if your submission answers the question centered around whether or not the federal government should have intervened at all in what some described as a state-level political dispute, or do you have a different perspective to that?
So I made the point, and that point is important to me, that the Constitution is clear about the powers of the president when you talk of state of emergency. Two organs of government intervene. President heading the executive, and the National Assembly that will have oversight functions over the legislative arm of the state. Their powers are not in dispute at all. What is in dispute and what was very troubling was whether the conditions and the threshold for the activation of those powers were in existence. Our answer then, as it remains now, is no. So what we therefore had was a federal system of government in which a part of that government, of that entity, was no longer governed democratically. And with all due respect to the outgone administrators, federal administrator, all through that 6 months, determined as he was to discharge the functions of the office that was created for him, I saw and I could appreciate that there was serious disconnect. You could see a stranger right in that position, but certainly not in authority, not in power, in relation to the legitimacy of what he was doing then. So I think it was well informed that this had to come to an end at the end of 6 months, just so that there will be a restoration of the democratically elected government at that subnational structure of our federation. So if you ask me, we know of a state of emergency, but the way and manner in which it was contrived and crafted this time, more or less created a diarchy in which a retired military officer, as it has always been, starting from
Mr. Agumadu, but before I come back to Mr. Ayodele, you just talked about the roles the National Assembly and the executive had played in this crisis. But as a lawyer, what role has the judiciary played or failed to play in resolving this crisis? Could timely judicial intervention have averted the escalation?
Oh, well, of course, Moses Majo.
Did you get that, Mr. Agumadu? All right. All right, I'll come back to you. Ms. Ayodele, let me come to you. Ask him about the role expected of the judiciary. For you, what about the National Assembly? Should they have played a more active oversight role?
The National Assembly was very decisive on that matter, and they were very quick to respond. And there was debate on the floor of the House. And the totality of the debate was that they approved what the President had asked for in order to secure peace and tranquility in Rivers State. So that process was methodically followed. And as for the judiciary, they also are following it and all of that. And I think as we journey on, we've all learned to work harmoniously, even from America, where we borrowed this system of government. We've seen situations where the executive will disagree with the legislator, and it doesn't mean that the legislator will break into a fragment, and proclaim themselves in tandem with the executive in that corner in order to water down the majority of the legislators that are in that parliament, right? So they must just learn to work in accordance with the provision of the Constitution and the rule of that separates the division of powers.
And just like I asked him about the judiciary, do you think a timely intervention could have averted the escalation of the whole issue?
What do you mean by timely intervention?
Perhaps if the judiciary had, intervened earlier than it did.
The judiciary cannot intervene if you don't take matter to them.
Okay.
Right? You must take matters to them. Even if there's imbroglio all over the place, if you don't go to them, there's nothing they can do.
All right. Mr. Agumadu, let me come back to you. Under Nigeria's federal constitution, states are meant to have a high degree of autonomy. In your view, does this intervention align with or undermine that federal principle? All right. All right. We'll get back to Mr. Agumadu in a minute. So just like I was saying, there's been this controversy or misunderstanding about Section 305 of the Constitution. Some have said this clearly outlines when a state of emergency can be declared and the role of the National Assembly in that process. Did the President's initial intervention and now the reversal respect that legal process? He talked about it, so I want to have your own perspective.
The first intervention that we saw on national TV of the President of the country was that it was a political approach, calling all parties together, discussing with them, and they all agreed, and they went back home, and something else happened.
Yes.
Then later we started seeing, flashpoints of crisis. Pipelines were threatened. Some people even came out wearing barakuva. Some even totally covered their faces and threatening the nation, and they were going to hit the nation where it hurts the most, and all of that. We also saw on national TV where people were coming out to threaten people, different provocative statements were used. And the Security Intelligence Unit started also picking intelligence that was brought to the President, and some of it also leaked to the media. And we all saw that. I don't think any right-thinking government will fold its arms and allow the whole place to burn down before a decisive action is taken. And like I told you earlier, that the first business of any government, as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution, or in any constitution, what so it may be, is to guarantee security of life and property. So you don't wait until crisis ensued. In fact, the best thing you can ever do is to prevent it before it engulfs the whole place.
But do you think we have a clear-cut definition or legal interpretation of Section 305? Because 6 months down the line, we saw, even before the president declared a state of emergency, we saw that so many lawyers were divided on what exactly the interpretation of Section 305 is.
Well, lawyers will always be divided based on dialectics, right? I'm not a lawyer, and when such matter comes, the best you can do is go to the judicial court, right? And that's why you have the judge, right, to interpret various contending arguments as protected by the book that governs them, right? So if that is put to test, then we can come out with a logical conclusion.
All right, we'll come back before we get to the genesis of, because I want to talk about the genesis of that crisis and whether or not all parties have learned a lesson. Mr. Ogumadu, are you there? All right, it's not there yet, so let's continue. There are those who are scared, or, I mean, they fear that whatever has happened in the last 1 year, in the last 2 years in River State, and the president's intervention may embolden political actors at the federal level to use state crisis as an opportunity to consolidate power or control state politics from Abuja. What's your perspective?
I differ from that. You don't use state powers to do what you have said. A very good leader should be able to preempt based on the reality on ground. And if you allow me to use your station as a case study, a day before your station was burnt, right, I was discussing with some people, and some of them from your corridor, and I preempted that, what if your station is burnt? Where are you going to come out to escape from? And I said, well, this area, that area are likely areas you can use and secure yourself. And the second day, what happened? While I was a student in the university, we had a lot of crises on campus and all that. Before the strike, we can preempt because you can see what people don't see. You pick information, right? You process it and you preempt it. So you don't wait for it to happen. If it happens, then you have failed as a leader. So you must preempt. And that's why you have security agencies everywhere. You understand that? Pick intelligence. You don't wait for it to happen once you have intelligence. You preempt it. If you wait for it to happen, then you can have human fatality. So how does it add up to you as the head of state or head of government, and you have bag of bodies to be picking all over the place? And you have buildings that have been burnt all over around. So you don't wait for it to happen. You move, quickly and prevent it and guarantee security for everyone to stay alive and continue with their business.
All right. Mr. Ogumadu, let me come to you. Just like I asked Mr. Ayodele, do we have a clear-cut definition or interpretation, legal interpretation of Section 305?
Well, the law is clear and written in very elementary language. Section 305 suffers no ambivalence. What has become convoluted is the application of Section 305. And you know, you threw a question at me before this time.
Yes.
You know, when the Supreme Court had the opportunity to comprehensively deal with section and also handle the ancillary sections that are related to it, for instance, dealing with membership of the State House of Assembly. In my humble view, and this is with profound respect, the Supreme Court did not effectively handle that situation in a way to bring up stability that such as ours needed. And as a policy court, it was a golden opportunity in my view that was missing. And I'm talking and referencing the defection of members of the River State House of Assembly from PDP to APC. But that aside, I had made my preliminary statement effect, the Section 305 you talk about, no, it's not a self-executory in the sense that once you perceive a situation, you therefore will act or totally.
So, Gumadu, are you there? All right, Mr. Adil, let me come back to you. And I have heard people say if the president can effectively step in and step out of a state crisis without judicial or legislative oversight, are we not weakening the checks and balances intended by the Constitution?
I don't think the president has stepped in and stepped out without judicial oversight. The judiciary is an institution that is activated when you take matters to them. Right? If you don't take matters to them, you don't activate them. I mean, they have nothing to do. They cannot walk without any matter in front of them. So those are two different arguments. The president has acted as the president of Nigeria that is protected by the rule of law, especially as is enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution. His major business, his major core business is to provide security and guarantee the safety of life and property. That is the first business, right? Because if he doesn't move quickly to do that, other things will start falling apart. So he has acted rightly.
All right. I heard, I'm sure you heard Mr. Gumadu when he says Section 305 is self-explanatory, but the application is what we have a challenge with. Do you think there should be a constitutional amendment to that effect?
I wouldn't understand in the context in which you have said Section 305 is very explicit.
He said so.
But it depends on the angle you're taking it from. And that is why I said that those angles have already, I mean, you go to court and test it, right? It's an acid test. But as it is, with the powers that is vested on the president, he has acted wisely and he has acted judiciously. All right. As backed by the Constitution.
All right. Mr. Gumadu, are you there? All right, not yet. So let's continue, and I want to talk about River State because, you know, for all its political turbulence, River State has, according to reports by Budget, if I'm correct now, River State has consistently ranked as Nigeria's fiscal powerhouse. Data from Budget State of State reports that was last year shows that the state ranked first out of 36 states in overall fiscal performance for 2 consecutive years, 2022-2023. But despite this fiscal resilience, has the state been able to, you know, fully translate its revenues into widespread prosperity?
Well, I don't have their budget before me, right, to actually see the application of the quantum of funds that they've received from the federal, and of course, juxtaposing it with the internally generated revenue, right? And I think I've only visited River State on 2 occasions in my life. One as a student activist. The second one was when we went with the Pronaco during Chima Ubani's lifetime. I think Barrister Gumadu should be at that conference, that we had the Pronaco, right, conference in Port Harcourt. So those were the 2 times I've been there. So I don't want to go into the matter where I've not really seen the organic build-up of project that they have there. But from what I've read, from the tabloid and seen in the mass media, I think the various governors and institutions that have overseen that political geographical space have been able to do their best. But again, in order to assess it very well, we need to look at their budget, check their inflow, check their outflow, and see how they've applicated those resources. All
right, Mr. Redin, let's go on a break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone. Thank you for staying with us, everyone. President Bola Tinubu ends state of emergency in Rivers, restores Governor Fubara. And I've been speaking with Malaki Gumadu, constitutional lawyer, former president, CDHR. Also in the studio with me is Ayodele Adewale, political affairs analyst. Mr. Gumadu, thank you for staying with us. Now, let me continue this conversation with you. What constitutional or institutional safeguards needs to be strengthened to prevent, you know, misuse of emergency powers in future? For those who think that there was anything like that.
Well, I have made the point that there were transgressions in the application of that provision. Okay. And therefore, It therefore calls for serious constraints on the part of the executive, on the part of the legislature. Now, on the part of the executive, we need to be very certain about what constitutes the kind of imminent danger and crisis that would justify the invocation of the state of emergency. It is not such a situation that should completely be left at the whims and caprices of the president. The Constitution went in details in explaining those kind of circumstances that must play out before you have the proclamation of state of emergency. On the part of the legislature this time includes National Assembly and the legislature at the sub-national level. But in particular, with respect to the State House of Assembly, they needed to understand that there are limitations, limits of their power. The way and manner they were carrying on in times preceding this proclamation clearly suggested that there was not going to be any meeting point. At the end of this whole situation, the question that had not been answered, which is by far more important than all the issues we have dealt with, is where is the place of the people of Rivers State in all that has happened in the last 2 years, and in particular in the last 6 months. You could see that this was just the show of the political gladiators who had disagreements, who could not see eye to eye, and who needed to test their will and strength, and if you like, power, within the state of Rivers, in a way that made the people of Rivers State depicted. In so many respects, there was no representation, there was no governance in the true sense of it. What you had was rulership of a sole administrator who was answerable to Mr. President and not to the people of Rivers State through their State House of Assembly. So you could say that these are some lessons that have been picked from this experience. We have had states of emergencies, and each one of them has presented a kind of situation that clearly demonstrates that we need to run away from the proclamation of states of emergency if possible. And that when it is ever used, seldomly as it ought to be, it must be in strict compliance with the constitutional provisions, as I have tried to enumerate.
All right, before we go back to the genesis of this crisis, specifically for those who question the role or recognition for political mentors or former governors to influence the actions of a sitting governor in the Nigerian constitution, have all sides, especially actors, have they learned or have they picked any lessons from this episode? Mr. Agumadu.
That would be a very satisfactory aspect of this situation, if indeed we can confidently say that they have picked lessons. But if we're allowed to hazard the fact that this suspension came on the heels of the reconciliation that took place, where the two political gladiators agreed to work together, regardless of what has happened politically, in terms of what has happened to the entire local government structure, which is the third tier of government in Nigeria, regarding what has happened to the State House, members of the State House of Assembly, then you could say that people have learned some lessons, even if it is, through the bitter way. And what are those lessons? They are lessons of constraints in leadership and governance. In other words, you cannot, on the basis of your own personal aggrandizement, your own personal selfish interests, throw the baby with the bathwater. You cannot do that. When you do that, you risk the danger of jeopardizing the collective interest of the people of an entire state. And therefore, the restraint I talk about is the capacity of leadership to realize their limits. within the constitutional framework that regulates their activities, such that if it turns out that at the end of the day, if you decide to go the whole hog in trying to assert what you think is your right based on your personal interests, if you come to the realization that where that is pursued to the whole hog, the danger is that you compromise the interest of the people you are leading, then you apply the restraints that I'm talking about. Leadership is also about sacrifice. That sacrifice that will enable you to suck it in, to take it in, and allow yourself to be the victim once you realize that the larger number of the people of that state will be exposed and made vulnerable. What is more, where it becomes clear that if you remain recalcitrant and fastidious on where you find yourself, you walk into the hands of an executive at the national body that is prepared to invoke the state of emergency. And you listen to the president's, Mr. President's statement. He alluded to that what has happened in Rivers State is a clear signal to other states in the federation, and that they ought to be, very mature and exercise restraints in their conduct, because anything close to what has happened in Rivers State could end any other state a state of emergency. So I would imagine that people who have gone through this on both sides of the divide should have picked one lessons from this experience and be able to organize leadership in such a way that the people do not suffer this kind of situation moving forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Agumada. I'll come back to you. Mr. Ayodele, this crisis has been seen as a classic case of godfatherism gone wrong. But for you, what lessons are in this for Nigerian politicians?
The lesson there will be that people should confine themselves to operating by the rules, regardless of tendency or interest, right? There's a rule. As long as you play by the rule, you learn to argue, you learn to lobby, and you learn to put your case forward in the best manner possible in order to attract attention, and attention that leads to conviction, for people to understand it from your perspective, if your perspective is truly right and is not bent towards selfish ends.
In this case, are you talking about Governor Fubara or Minister Wike?
I'm talking about the system itself,
okay,
right? I'm talking about the system. And if you have been thrown up from a particular system where there was clear-cut understanding prior to your emergence, you should learn to stay with that system, right, and operate within the system. If there's going to be a divergence of view, you can always go back and do your presentation for them to see clearly that why don't we take it this other way, rather than everybody drawing the sword, forgetting the fact that you are there to lead people, right? And loyalty is very important. It's very important in anything we do. Because if people have come together aggregately to decide that you lead us, right? They have surrendered their sovereignty to your leadership. Come lead us, right? You must also understand that you must learn to listen to them, because they could have picked from among the pack and you also would have killed in. So loyalty is very, very important.
Well, you've talked about loyalty, but I mean, let me flip the question, because there are those who have said Governor Fubara's resistance marks a turning point in the fight against godfatherism, political godfatherism in Nigeria. Where do you stand?
Don't throw me in the ring. It's called guide father. If you use the word godfather in the context of the Nigerian space, you can't be misunderstood, right? I would rather call it guide father. You can call it godfather, but in the Nigerian context, for people to understand it clearly, A godfather is a guide father. He's there to guide you, right? To an end.
But some assert control.
To an end that is profitable for society. Yes. Take for instance in the Catholic. If you give birth to a child, I heard they will say, come, I mean, who is the godfather of this child? You bring out somebody that is exemplary, right? Somebody who the child can look up to. And when he wants to be like, or she wants to be like and surpass, that is your godfather. I have several godfathers. I have several of them. And I have one that towers above them.
So how do you relate that to Nigerian politics?
That is why I said, in the Nigerian context, the word have been miscued. And I don't want to start opening people's agitation. That is why I prefer to use the word guide father.
Because there are some politicians who tend to guide a younger politician for their own selfish ambition.
When I was a student activist, there was a turning point. Normally, I would come to campus, take pictures, go for my lectures. I like fun. I like a very quiet environment. I was coming on this day during the military era. They were shooting tear gas at the gate and all of that. I saw a man under the tree, was talking to the student, and that was Chief Gani Fawemi. And I listened to him. That was my turning point. At that point, he became my godfather. Okay. Right? And I started my journey. 1999 came. We were to take part in the whole process, right? There was a law in the student movement that we should not take part in the political activity. But again, we had aligned with NADECO. And I met Chief Abraham Adesoya. He came to the campus, we met outside. I met Baba Ayo Fasomi, I think. Yeah, they were putting on red shirt, and I told them there's no need to preach to us. We are going with NADECO. So I took the union resources, and thank God one of them, that was the speaker then, is now the chairman of Ibejuleki local government. I was president, he was speaker. We took the resources, myself, Akim Ajasa, Teslim is dead now, and we went and we supported the then president. Without even meeting him, we supported, right? Then we met, and we had a meeting for 7 hours. That was during the GC98 struggle, right? The then judge that sat on that matter is now the Supreme Court Justice, right? And at that point, I listened to this man for 7 hours. He listened to us. We presented 96 pages of Lassus problem. He took it, dusted it. At that point, I kid him, and he became my godfather. Many years again, we met again, right? We had different issues. He listened to our agitation, our campaign, and all of that. We campaigned along the side. I won his support. I became the chairman of the local government, Wamu Ward of in 2008. And ever since, he has been my godfather, right? So no matter what people say, that is your own point of argument. But you
Which
must
is valid.
I respect your argument, right? You must also respect my argument and see what we've been able to do, right? I don't have godfathers that have come to destroy the space. I have godfathers that have come to add value to the space.
All right. Mr. Okumadu, I'm sure you listened to Mr. Ayodele's submission, but is there any legal or institutional mechanism to check this culture of informal control over elected officers? For those who say this is a case of godfatherism gone wrong.
Well, what I could suggest, and this is not entirely without further scrutiny, is the kind of conscientization, a fresh consciousness, you know, amongst Nigerians, but in particular the electorates. The reason is that the godfather syndrome that exists in Nigeria is not exactly the kind of godfather that exists in every other political setting. Like I did hear Mr. Adewale say, it is not entirely a vice. I mean, godfatherism, in a way, operates in so many political settings where younger political actors, people who are supposed to be the followers and who ordinarily ought to have the greater percentage of the power, have been have been railroaded to believe that it is only him, it is only the godfather that can superintend the affairs of. So I make the point that where godfatherism is designed to guarantee enough knowledge around political activities that can promote good governance and productivities and growth, that is a welcome development. But if it turns out to be a system or a syndrome that promotes self-aggrandizement against collective growth, then the people should sever that kind of arrangement. And it comes with this consciousness that I talk about, political consciousness. That political consciousness includes the fact that people must learn to understand what exactly is their right in every political setting, such that the stories that were usually told and which are never scrutinized cannot fly in contemporary times. And I see that that is gradually happening. That's why you hear that this one has betrayed this one and the other one has betrayed. What we need is a proper political orientation, and it comes with civic education, political education, not just by politicians, but by political parties. Gone are those days when we ought to have a party run by a single person. We're all students of history and learned how people who belong to political parties all made contributions, what you could call crowdfunding, with little contributions that enabled them to own those political entities in a way that also enabled them to defend it. So I hear what you are saying, but I make the bigger point that it requires fresh consciousness on the part of the victims of this godfatherism, because we suffer so much from it. At the end of the day, as it is in Nigeria, it is not entirely a good syndrome. That is why we must have to either define it or throw it away entirely.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gumadu. Finally, with you, Mr. Ayodele, can we say peace has finally returned to Rivers State?
I want to believe so. I mean, looking at the optics of events that came up today from their parliament and all whatnot, I really want to believe so. And
what do you hope to see in the coming days?
Well, for me, they are work in progress. There are so many developmental projects that are on ground. The legislators also have a lot of bills to work on. Their budget should be represented. I think that was one of the major issues they have, and so many things. I want to see the economy of Rivers State booming beyond their expectations, like I've said before. I want to visit Rivers State. I want people to come to Rivers State, especially for this Yolitide period. Lagos will be too full, right? And a lot of activities should also go there. I was watching your medium today. I learned more about Mary Slessor and all that. So I want to go to Rivers State and move to Calabar and enjoy myself.
All right then. And I mean, we would continue to monitor the developments in Rivers State, and we just hope that peace has finally returned to the state. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Malaki Ugumadu, constitutional lawyer, former president, CDHR, Ayodele Adewale, political affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your perspectives.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Good night, everyone.